Before God says the famous line, "There's smoke in the air," bows snapped in half, spears broken, a pile of shields burning down to nothing. Someone has just ended a war. Not with a treaty, not with a negotiation, by taking every weapon off the field and setting it on fire. And it's into that wreckage, not a quiet room, not a peaceful morning, that a voice says, "Be still and know that I am God." We've put that phrase on coffee mugs, on bedroom walls, like it's a gentle suggestion to relax. But the Hebrew word underneath it was never really about your mood. It's about your hands. And by the end of this, you'll never read that verse the same way again. Psalm 46 carries a heading most people skip straight past. Written by the sons of Korah. That name should stop you. Korah was a Levite, a man with real standing among Israel's priestly family. And in the wilderness, standing was never enough for him. In Numbers 16, Korah gathers 250 leaders and confronts Moses and Aaron directly. "You have gone too far," he tells them. "The whole congregation is holy. Why do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" It sounds almost noble. It wasn't. Moses falls on his face. He proposes a test. Let the Lord decide who is holy. The next morning, the ground itself answers. The earth opens beneath Korah's household. Everything he owns, everyone standing with him, goes down alive into the pit, and the earth closes over them, like it was never disturbed at all. That should be the end of the story. It isn't. A few chapters later, almost in passing, Numbers tells us something easy to miss. The line of Korah did not perish. His sons lived. Generations pass. And when 1 Chronicles picks the family back up, something remarkable has happened. Korahites are serving as gatekeepers at the sanctuary. One of them is entrusted with baking the sacred bread for the offerings. Others become the temple's musicians, the guild responsible for its most treasured songs. Sit with that for a second. The descendants of a man swallowed alive for storming the sanctuary become the family standing guard at its doors. The family judged for grabbing at glory that wasn't theirs becomes the family singing about a God who cannot be shaken. And it's this family, this exact bloodline, that opens a song with the earth giving way and mountains dropping into the sea, and then insists, "We will not fear." Whether they chose that imagery on purpose, we can't know for certain. But once you know who's singing, it's hard to unhear it. The psalm itself is built like a piece of music, not a paragraph. It falls into 3 distinct movements, each one marked off by a pause. A term scholars still aren't fully certain how to translate, possibly a lift in the performance, possibly a moment of silence. And twice, in the middle of all that motion, the same 6 words return like a chorus. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Once at the end of movement 1, once again to close the whole psalm. That refrain is the heartbeat underneath everything else. And it tells you something important before you even reach verse 10. This was never a song about safe conditions. It's a song about presence inside conditions that are anything but safe. Keep that refrain in your ear, because everything about to happen in this psalm, the collapsing, the roaring, the disarming, it's all happening while that sentence stays true. The first movement opens like a controlled demolition of creation itself. Though the earth give way, though the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, for an ancient listener, that isn't weather. Mountains were the fixed furniture of the world, the one thing you could count on staying exactly where you left it. The sea was the opposite. Chaos. The deep. The place of monsters and drowning, the one force a farming people had no way to control. So mountains falling into the sea isn't a storm. It's the stable order of the universe sliding into chaos. Everything solid, failing at once. And right in the middle of naming that terror, The psalm makes a quiet claim most readers rush past. God is called a very present help in trouble, which in the Hebrew sits closer to a help richly found. Abundantly available. The kind of help you stumble into, not the kind you have to go hunting for. Before anyone is told to do anything with their hands, that's already been established. Then the second movement changes the sound completely. There is a river, whose streams make glad the city of God. And here's where you need to stop and notice something strange. Jerusalem had no river. Every great capital city in the ancient world sat on one. Egypt had the Nile. Babylon had the Euphrates. Assyria built its power on the Tigris. Rivers meant trade, meant food, meant a city could outlast a siege. Jerusalem had a single, modest spring, cut into a hillside, barely enough to keep a city alive, through hard years. So when this psalm puts a river in the city of God anyway, that's not a slip. That's the writers reaching past geography on purpose. And it doesn't stop with this psalm. Centuries later, Ezekiel sees water flowing out from beneath the temple threshold, growing deeper the farther it travels, until it becomes a river too wide to cross. And centuries after that, Revelation closes the entire Bible with the same picture. A river of the water of life, running straight down the center of the city street. The roaring sea in verse 3 is trying to drown the world. The quiet river in verse 4 is gladdening it. Same substance, completely opposite work. And the only difference is which city it's running through. Then the third movement brings the noise back. Only now it's not the earth shaking. It's human. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. The same Hebrew verb used for the raging sea gets used again here for these nations. Kingdoms make the sound of a storm. Armies roar like surf crashing on rock. And into all of that noise, God speaks one time. And the earth melts like wax, too close to a flame. That's the sound Psalm 46 has been building toward this whole time. And it's into that exact moment. Verse 9. That God does something nobody expects. Before the command ever comes, God disarms the entire field. He breaks the bow. He shatters the spear. He burns the shields down to nothing, and smoke is still rising off the ashes. When the next sentence arrives, be still, and know that I am God. Here's what almost no one tells you about that line. The Hebrew verb is raphah, and its root sense has nothing to do with silence. It has to do with slackening, going limp, tension leaving something that's been holding tight. Look at where this word shows up. In its plain form across the Hebrew Bible, and a picture starts repeating itself. Hands, fingers loosening, a grip failing, strength draining out of arms that have been holding on as hard as they possibly can. That's the image sitting underneath this verse. Not quiet your mind. Open your hands and notice exactly when this command arrives. Not before the collapse, not after it's over, and everyone's had time to recover. Right in the middle of it. Right when a person grips hardest. That's not an accident. That's the whole point. Now, to be fair to every translator who ever rendered this be still, that reading isn't wrong. Standard Hebrew dictionaries list cease and be quiet as genuine, legitimate senses of this word. Real scholars, reading honestly, landed there for good reason. And this phrase has carried real comfort to real people in English for 400 years. Nothing here is a correction. It's a sharpening. Be still tells you to stop. Raphah tells you which muscles. And once you feel the difference, you can't unfeel it. This isn't a mood the psalm wants you to manufacture. It's an action aimed directly at your hands. So who, exactly, is this command aimed at? Verse 10 is God speaking directly. And the second half of that same verse gives us a clue we shouldn't skip past. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Those are the same nations who were roaring and rising up just a few lines earlier. So a long line of readers, going back to ancient interpreters, have understood this as God addressing the warring nations themselves directly. Stand down. You're finished. Your bows are already broken. Your shields are already burning. Open your hands and find out who you were actually fighting. But other readers hear this differently. As comfort spoken to God's own trembling people, the ones who just watch mountains slide into the sea, the ones that refrain keeps reassuring twice, as if once wasn't enough. Here's the honest answer. Careful readers still disagree. And it might be the wrong question to force a choice at all. This is a public song, sung out loud, in a temple, meant to be heard by everyone. It aims outward at the nations, while landing squarely on the people singing it, which means something remarkable. The attacker and the attacked are hearing the exact same instruction, at the exact same moment. Everyone still holding a weapon, on either side of that line, is told the same thing. Open your hands. Quick pause before we go further. If this kind of close reading, the kind that stops to ask what a Hebrew word is actually doing underneath the English translation, is helpful to you, take a second and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people looking for exactly this. And if you're already here, thank you. Now, back to the smoke, because there's a distinction coming that changes everything about how this command actually works. Here's where it would be easy to hear all of this and land somewhere passive. Let go. Stop holding on. Surrender the outcome. It sounds like the psalm is asking you to do nothing. It isn't. Look at who's actually moving in this poem. God is the busiest figure in the entire psalm. He breaks. He shatters. He burns. He lifts his voice, and the earth itself melts. Every verb attached to him is a verb of action. The release asked of the singers was never a release from doing. It's a release from one specific kind of doing. The frantic kind. The self-rescue. The white-knuckle grip that shows up the moment a person becomes convinced that everything, the outcome, the safety, the ending, depends entirely on how tightly they hold on. Surrender was never the same thing as giving up. Trust was never the same thing as inactivity. And letting go of the outcome was never permission to walk away from the responsibility still sitting in front of you. Now follow this same root word to one more place, and the whole shape of this command comes into focus. Joshua chapter 1. Moses has just died. Joshua is standing at the edge of a river, with an entire nation behind him, and a war waiting on the other side. Every reason in the world for his hands to be shaking is sitting right there in that scene. And God says to him, "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you, nor forsake you." That phrase, "I will never leave you," is built on this exact same Hebrew root, and the sense underneath it runs close to this: I will not let my grip on you go slack. My hands will not loosen. I will not let go. Feel what's happening here. The verb God commands of us in Psalm 46, he rules out completely for himself. We're told to loosen our grip. He announces, he never will. But watch what comes next, because this is the part people miss. That promise doesn't arrive alone. In the very same chapter, Joshua is told, 3 separate times, to be strong and courageous. He's given a river to cross, a fortified city to take, a war to actually fight. The promise arrives with an assignment attached. And that's the logic holding this entire command together. Your hands can open, because his never do. Letting go of the outcome was never the same thing as stepping back from the mission. There's a scene that plays out at pools and beaches every summer, and almost nobody connects it to any of this. Lifeguards are trained never to approach a drowning swimmer head-on. Here's why. A person in genuine panic has stopped thinking entirely. Their whole body is committed to one single goal: getting a head above water by any means necessary. And anything solid within reach becomes something to climb, including the person who came to save them. It happens often enough that entire training programs are built around it. Approach from behind where possible. Put flotation between yourself and the swimmer. Keep your distance until the panic actually breaks. And the instruction shouted to the person still drowning is the one their entire body refuses to believe. Stop swimming. Stop fighting. Let your arms go slack. Because the thrashing is the very thing pulling them under. And help cannot reach someone who is still frantically trying to save themselves. That's the command sitting inside Psalm 46:10. And here's the detail that changes everything about it. It isn't shouted from the shore, by someone safe and dry. It's shouted by someone already in the water with you, which brings this all the way to a garden. In Gethsemane, the pressure isn't coming from outside anymore. No collapsing mountains. No roaring nations. The pressure is inside Jesus himself. He is in anguish. He asks, 3 separate times, for the cup to pass from him. There's no calm room here. No gentle light through a window. No trace of serenity anywhere in the account. He names exactly what he wants. Let this cup pass. He doesn't pretend the cost isn't real. He doesn't perform peace he isn't feeling. And then he says the words that carry this entire command into a human body. Not my will, but yours be done. That's the open hand, held out in the dark, with full knowledge of exactly what it would cost, by someone who wanted a different answer, badly enough to ask for one out loud, 3 times, and still opened his hand anyway. It did not feel peaceful while it was happening, which should settle something for anyone who has ever felt like a failure, for struggling while they let go. Surrender was never the absence of pain. It's naming the pain honestly and releasing the outcome anyway. So where does this land in your actual life? Tonight? A diagnosis you keep rereading, as if reading it harder will somehow change the numbers on the page. A stretch of unemployment, where the applications are already sent, and now you're just refreshing an inbox at 11 at night. A relationship sitting in a season neither of you has a name for yet. Here's the distinction worth holding on to. The grip is the part you get to set down. The responsibility never was. You still take the medication. You still send the next application. You still show up and do the difficult, unglamorous work of loving someone who is hard to love right now. What loosens isn't the task in front of you. It's the exhausting belief that the outcome was ever resting on how tightly you were holding it in the first place. Go back to the smoke for a moment. The bows are still broken. The spears are still in pieces on the ground. The shields are still burning down to nothing, in a field where a war used to be. And into all of that wreckage, a voice says, let your hands drop. Not because nothing matters anymore. Not because the outcome doesn't matter, but because someone else has already taken hold of what you were never strong enough to carry alone in the first place. If this changed how you read that verse, subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me what you're holding onto tonight. Even one word helps this reach someone who needs to hear it. God bless you.